Have you ever been turned away, even when you knew you deserved better? Imagine walking into a luxurious hotel, rain pouring down outside, your clothes drenched, but you hold your confidence steady. You need a room for the night, but instead of handing you a key, the receptionist gives you a cold, indifferent smile and says, "Sorry, we're fully booked." Then right behind you, another person walks in. No reservation, nothing special about them, and yet they receive a room immediately. You stand there feeling invisible. What would you do? Walk away quietly or make them regret underestimating you? Drop a comment below if you've ever faced something similar. And if you want to know how one man turned this humiliation into an unforgettable victory, keep watching. Rain lashed against the windshield like 1,000 tiny needles as James Anderson pulled his sleek black SUV into the driveway of the Grand Horizon Hotel. Droplets slid down the glass, reflecting the golden glow of the entrance. The grandeur of the establishment, undeniable. But James wasn't here for the luxury. He just needed a room, a place to rest after a delayed flight and an exhausting day. Stepping through the revolving glass doors, he shook the rain off his sleeves, the scent of lilies and espresso wrapping around him. Everything in this place was designed to be inviting, just not for him. James approached the reception desk, offering a polite smile. "Good evening. I need a room for the night." The receptionist, Isabella, didn't bother looking up. Her fingers glided across the keyboard, slow and deliberate, stretching the silence between them. "I'm sorry, we're fully booked." Her tone was flat, devoid of any regret. James furrowed his brows. He had anticipated this response, yet it still unsettled him. "No rooms available? Are you sure?" At last, Isabella lifted her gaze, her expression framed by a professional yet hollow smile. "Not a single one." James nodded slowly, his eyes flicking to the digital display behind her, where available rooms were still clearly listed. He didn't say anything. He just stood there, listening to the muffled laughter from the lounge, the chime of the elevator as another guest entered, the arrival of a middle-aged couple, drenched from the rain. "Good evening. Do you have a reservation?" Isabella's voice softened instantly, her demeanor shifting into something far more welcoming. The couple shook their heads. No reservation, no prior arrangement. "No problem at all. Let me check." Her fingers danced across the keyboard again, but this time it took mere seconds before she handed them a gleaming room key. James felt his heart beat slow. No rooms available? Or just no room for him? He didn't look away from Isabella, and she didn't meet his gaze. The silence stretched between them, an unspoken truth hanging in the air. Outside, the rain kept falling, colder than before. He stepped back, watching from the shadows. James took a step back, letting his body slip into the shadows of the hotel lobby, observing. If there were no rooms left, then why had Isabella just handed a key to the couple who walked in moments ago? That question hung in his mind like the edge of a sharp blade. Another guest arrived, a young man, a backpack slung lazily over one shoulder, faded jeans, a hoodie still speckled with raindrops. He approached the counter and repeated the exact request James had made just minutes earlier. "I need a room for the night." Isabella didn't hesitate. No cold frown, no immediate rejection. Instead, she smiled. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, faster this time. "Of course, we still have several rooms available. Would you prefer a sea view or a garden view?" A cold wave ran down James's spine. No rooms available. That was what they had told him. But reality said otherwise. He stared at the polished keycard Isabella handed over without a second thought. The young man thanked her and walked toward the elevator, blissfully unaware that he had just crossed an invisible line. A line that James, well-dressed, poised, composed, had not been allowed to cross. In that moment, everything became clear. It wasn't because the hotel was full. It wasn't because he had arrived too late. It was because they had decided before he even spoke that he didn't belong here. James clenched his fist, feeling the weight of realization settle over him. No anger, no frustration, just the cold, undeniable truth. He could walk away, let it go, move on. But a part of him knew, tonight, he wouldn't let this slide. James didn't confront them. He didn't need to. Years of running an empire had taught him a valuable lesson. Silence can be louder than words. He stepped out of the hotel, into the cold rain, letting the chill wash away the lingering warmth of the lobby. Droplets ran through his hair, trailed down his face, but he paid them no mind. Standing beneath the canopy near the entrance, he pulled out his phone, scrolling through his contacts. One tap. A sharp, confident voice answered. "James, it's late. What's going on?" "Lisa," he said, his voice low and steady. "I want to buy Grand Horizon, immediately." A pause. Then Lisa let out a short, knowing laugh. "You're serious?" "Never been more serious." Lisa didn't need an explanation. She knew James didn't make impulsive decisions. If he wanted this hotel, it meant a battle line had been drawn, and someone was about to pay the price. "I'll look into their financials. Last I heard, they were struggling." James smirked. A place this extravagant, standing on the edge of collapse? That explained everything. "Then make them an offer they can't refuse." He glanced back toward the entrance, his eyes gleaming with quiet determination. Isabella and people like her thought they could decide who was welcome here. But in a few days, James Anderson would make sure they understood the truth. He was the one who decided who stayed. The tables have turned. Rain poured endlessly as James sat in his car, the streetlights casting a hazy glow on the windshield. His fingers moved swiftly across his phone screen, dialing a familiar number. "Lisa, what's the status?" "I just finished checking," Lisa's sharp, efficient voice responded. "Grand Horizon is in serious financial trouble. The current owner is desperate to sell before it becomes a liability. If you want in, now is the perfect time." James smirked. A lavish, prestigious hotel, yet standing on the brink of collapse? Ironic. "Do they know who's buying?" "Not yet, but if you want to stay anonymous, I can arrange everything through a subsidiary." James nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "Do it. I want the contract on my desk before sunrise." A brief pause. Then Lisa let out a quiet chuckle. "You're really serious? All this, just because they refused you a room?" James glanced through the rain-speckled window toward the glowing entrance of the hotel. Isabella and people like her believed they held the power to decide who belonged. They thought a suit, an attitude, or a dismissive smirk could define the boundaries between the worthy and the overlooked. "No," he said slowly, "not just for the room, for what it represents. Injustice, prejudice, the invisible lines that too many were forced to accept." But James Anderson was not one to accept. Tonight, Grand Horizon still belonged to them. But in just a few hours, it would be his. And after that, everything would change. Forever. The morning sun cast a golden hue over Grand Horizon's gleaming glass facade. Inside, the staff moved briskly, preparing for another day. The aroma of espresso filled the air, the soft clinking of porcelain cups adding to the routine morning hum. Everything seemed perfectly normal, until the front doors swung open. James Anderson walked in. No longer a guest seeking shelter from the rain. No longer a man turned away with a calculated, empty smile. Today, he was the owner. His steps were steady, his suit flawless, his presence unmistakable. He didn't need to speak. His arrival alone shifted the energy in the room. At the front desk, Isabella, who just hours ago had dismissed him so effortlessly, stood frozen. The polished, professional smile she once used to mask her silent judgments was now useless. She struggled to compose herself. "Good morning, sir. How may I assist you?" James slowly placed a sleek black folder onto the counter. Sharp edges, crisp lettering, documents that left no room for doubt. "Ownership papers." "That won't be necessary, Isabella," he said, locking eyes with her. "I'm just here to inform you that as of today, Grand Horizon belongs to me." Silence. The entire lobby seemed to pause. Staff members exchanged glances, confusion and curiosity flickering across their faces. Isabella gripped the edge of the desk, her complexion turning pale. Last night, she had the power to decide who stayed. Today, she stood on the edge of being removed herself. And James? He simply stood there, quietly savoring the moment the rules of the game changed forever. The air in the lobby grew heavy, as if time itself had paused. Isabella stood frozen, her wide eyes reflecting the weight of James's words. "Grand Horizon now belongs to me." Around them, employees stopped in their tracks, their gazes shifting between disbelief and astonishment. Some exchanged nervous glances, while others turned toward Isabella, the woman who, just last night, held all the power, now looking as though the ground had crumbled beneath her feet. James calmly pulled another stack of documents from his briefcase and placed them on the counter. No further explanation was needed. Everyone understood. This was not just a simple change of ownership. "I didn't come here just to own this hotel," he said, his voice measured, steady. "I came here to change it." No one spoke, but James could almost hear the thoughts racing through their minds. Were they worried? Were they wondering if they still had a place here? His gaze swept across the room before settling on Isabella. She swallowed hard, struggling to maintain her usual composure, but the tension in her posture betrayed her. "This hotel was once a symbol of luxury," James continued, "but in the process, it lost something far more important: respect for everyone who walks through these doors." He let the words settle, ensuring that their meaning fully sank in. "Starting today, that changes." A pause. Then he turned his eyes directly to Isabella. "But change begins with people." She stiffened. With deliberate ease, James flipped open the folder and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "You're fired, effective immediately." The entire room held its breath. Isabella parted her lips as if to protest, but no words came. She took an instinctive step back, as if she had been pushed to the edge of a precipice. "James, He raised a hand, cutting her off. "There's nothing to discuss. Your actions last night spoke for themselves." Silence wrapped around the lobby like a dense fog. But within that silence, James noticed something shifting, a flicker of hope in the eyes of the other employees. A quiet anticipation for something different, something better. In the far corner, Lily Harris, a young staff member, watched with eyes that gleamed, not with fear, but with something else. Not everyone was against change. James took a deep breath, then allowed a small, knowing smile to form. Grand Horizon will no longer be a place reserved for a select few. He looked around, making sure every person in the room understood. From now on, this will be a place where anyone can walk in and know that they belong. A new era had begun. Grand Horizon had once been a dazzling hotel, but beneath its lavish facade lay an outdated system and a toxic culture deeply ingrained in every corner. James knew that words alone wouldn't bring change. He needed action. The next day, the transformation began. Worn-out carpets were stripped away. Dim, lifeless lighting was replaced with warm, inviting fixtures, creating an atmosphere that truly welcomed guests. The cold, impersonal walls of the lobby were redesigned, not with generic decorations, but with artwork from local artists, symbolizing a renewed connection between the hotel and the community. But the most important change wasn't in the decor, it was in the people. James gathered all employees in the conference room, his eyes scanning the room filled with both anxiety and anticipation. "I don't care how long you've worked here or what you've done before. The only thing that matters to me is whether you're willing to change." A tense silence filled the room. Then a voice broke through. "Change? How?" It was Lily Harris, a young employee with potential, someone James had noticed from the very beginning. He smiled. "We're going to learn how to serve everyone, with no bias, no assumptions, and no judgment." Training began immediately. Experts in diversity and inclusion were brought in. Workshops didn't just teach customer service. They challenged employees to confront their own prejudices. Some resisted, but most soon realized this wasn't just a business shift. It was a chance to be part of something better. A month later, Grand Horizon was no longer the place that had turned a man away in the rain based on a snap judgment. It had become a symbol of respect and genuine hospitality. And James knew this was only the beginning. Lily Harris never imagined she'd play a key role in such a massive change. When James Anderson first walked into that meeting as the new owner, she assumed he was just another businessman looking to shake things up before moving on. But day by day, she watched him prove otherwise. She saw him tear down outdated walls, not just through renovation contracts, but through policies that brought fairness into every decision. She saw how he gave opportunities to those who had been overlooked. But most of all, she saw how he truly saw people, not for their past, but for who they could become. At first, Lily simply did her job. She followed the new guidelines, adapted to the changes. Then one day, as James passed the front desk, he stopped. "Lily." She startled slightly, looking up. "I need someone to help me rebuild this hotel," he said. "Someone who knows its ins and outs. Someone who speaks up when they see something wrong. And I think that person is you." Lily blinked, her heart skipping a beat. "You mean, I want to promote you, assistant manager?" The lobby fell into silence. Her colleagues exchanged glances, surprised. Lily, a young employee who had never thought she'd rise beyond her current role, was now being offered something greater. "Why me?" she asked hesitantly. James smiled. "Because you were the first to ask, how will we change? Instead of just, what will happen to me?" Lily swallowed hard. Anxiety, pride, and something even bigger stirred within her. "I won't let you down." James nodded. "I know." And in that moment, Lily Harris crossed her own invisible line, transforming from an ordinary employee into someone who could truly make a difference. At first, no one believed Grand Horizon could change. The old guests, the ones who once walked in with a proud smirk, certain they belonged more than anyone else, watched the changes in quiet observation. The new guests, the ones who had once hesitated at the entrance, began to feel the difference. No more scrutinizing stares. No more cold, superficial smiles. Instead, Grand Horizon welcomed everyone as if they were the most valued guests. A month later, the online reviews told the story. "Exceptional service, truly welcoming staff. I've never felt more at home. For the first time, I stayed at a luxury hotel without being judged by my appearance." Grand Horizon is not just beautiful in architecture, it's beautiful in the way it treats people. This transformation wasn't just about a change in ownership. It was about the people inside the building. Lily Harris, with her dedication and sense of responsibility, became the face of the hotel's rebirth. She ensured that no one would ever be treated unfairly again. Employees who once kept their distance now smiled genuinely. And James Anderson? He watched it all unfold, saying nothing, just offering a quiet nod. Because he knew he hadn't just changed a hotel. He had turned a place that once excluded people into a place where they truly belonged. A lesson for Isabella. The morning Isabella walked out of Grand Horizon after being fired, she never thought that door would close on her forever. She had always believed she was a great employee. She hadn't made any disastrous mistakes. She hadn't caused trouble. She hadn't done anything in her mind that should have resulted in immediate termination. But when she stood in front of James Anderson that day, she realized something harsh. Sometimes it's not about a single scandalous mistake. Sometimes one poor judgment is enough to change someone's life, or your own. In the days that followed, reality hit hard. She sent out applications to other hotels, but word traveled faster than she expected. Grand Horizon had not publicly announced her firing, but rumors still spread through the industry. "You're Isabella, the one from Grand Horizon, right? Why did you leave?" She struggled to find an answer that wouldn't damage her pride. For years, she had believed the world operated on a simple rule. People like her had the power to judge others. They decided who belonged and who didn't. Now she was the one being judged. Eventually, Isabella secured a position, not at a five-star hotel, not at a prestigious establishment, but at a small hotel restaurant. She had no other options. She was no longer the front desk employee with authority. She was starting over, this time as a server. For the first time, she understood what it felt like to be overlooked. The colleagues she had once dismissed, the ones who had done this job before her, now became her teachers. They didn't admire her. They didn't respect her for her past. To them, she was just another new employee, no privileges, no status. Then one night, a guest walked in, wearing simple clothes, shoes soaked from the rain. And Isabella understood something. She had once sat behind a front desk, making judgments without ever knowing someone's story. She had once believed a glance was enough to decide who deserved a place and who didn't. She took a deep breath, then stepped forward, with a genuine smile. "Good evening, sir. How can I assist you?" No more pretending, no more judgment, just a person learning how to start over. James stood by the window of the Grand Horizon's executive suite, looking down at the hotel lobby. Just months ago, this place had been cold and unwelcoming, filled with invisible barriers that separated people. Now everything had changed. Grand Horizon was no longer an exclusive fortress for the privileged few. It had become a place where anyone could walk in and feel like they belonged. Guests who might have once been turned away were now welcomed with genuine smiles. Employees no longer hesitated or judged. They took pride in their work, in their ability to serve without prejudice. James's gaze settled on Lily Harris, chatting with a family at the front desk. She was no longer the timid employee he first met. She had grown into a leader, a vital part of this transformation. The elevator doors slid open, and a middle-aged man stepped into the lobby. His clothes were simple, his suitcase worn, but there was no hesitation in his posture, only the quiet confidence of someone who knew he belonged here. James was suddenly reminded of himself that rainy night, how he had walked into this very lobby, carrying the same confidence, only to be judged and rejected in an instant. Now watching this man receive the welcome that he himself had once been denied, James knew he had done the right thing. His desk phone rang. Lisa. James, this quarter's profits are surging. Grand Horizon is becoming a symbol. He smiled, but not because of the numbers. For the first time in his career, he realized success wasn't just measured in profit. It was measured in people. People who had once been overlooked, now finding their place. And for James Anderson, that was the greatest achievement of his life. A different kind of legacy. James stood at the Grand Horizon bar, a glass of red wine in his hand, watching guests move in and out of the hotel. The space looked nothing like it had when he first arrived. The lobby felt warmer, more open, the lighting softer, reflecting off polished marble floors. But more than that, every guest who walked in carried a sense of belonging. A deep voice broke through his thoughts. "You're James Anderson, aren't you?" James turned. Standing beside him was a distinguished middle-aged man, salt and pepper hair neatly combed, his presence exuding quiet strength. His sharp eyes held both intensity and wisdom, the look of a man who had seen the world. "I'm Richard Carter," he said, extending a firm hand. James shook it, a solid handshake. Strong, certain. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Carter. Have you stayed here before?" Richard nodded, scanning the lobby. "I was here years ago, but back then I wasn't welcome." James paused for a moment. He didn't need to ask why. Richard inhaled deeply, his gaze locking onto James's. "What you've done here isn't just about a hotel, James. You've changed the way people see fairness." James felt the weight of those words. "My son was once treated as if he was invisible," Richard continued. "He had money. He had talent. But not everyone was willing to see that. When I heard about how Grand Horizon changed, I knew it wasn't just a business move. You tore down an invisible barrier that no one else dared to touch." James set down his glass, looking at Richard with quiet contemplation. He had seen the changes firsthand, in his employees, in his guests. But this was the first time someone outside his world had told him that what he had done was bigger than just a business. It had reached lives he never even knew he could touch. Richard placed a firm hand on James's shoulder. "Thank you," he said, "for thinking beyond profit, for thinking about people." James gave a slow nod, because in the end, his greatest legacy wasn't Grand Horizon itself. It was how he changed the way the world worked, one person at a time. A peaceful evening. The streetlights cast a golden glow on the gentle waves of the distant ocean. But within him, another wave stirred, not one of anger or ambition, but of fulfillment. He thought back to that rainy night when he stood right here, yet felt so different. Back then, he was a stranger, turned away without reason. But today he didn't just belong here. He had transformed this place into one where anyone could belong. The revolving door behind him spun open, and Lily Harris stepped out, a quiet smile on her lips. "Did you see that?" she asked, her eyes shimmering with something unspoken. James nodded. He had seen it. A young family had just entered, not dressed in luxury, not carrying designer luggage. Just an ordinary family. But they were welcomed warmly, sincerely. No more scrutinizing stares. No more cold, artificial smiles. There will always be barriers to break, Lily said softly. James turned to her. But if one person is brave enough to step through first, the world will follow. His gaze returned to the hotel, once a symbol of exclusion, now a testament to something greater, a statement that respect is not a privilege. It is a right for everyone. James took a deep breath, letting the cool ocean air fill his lungs. He had proven something important. Change doesn't begin with grand speeches. It starts with small, courageous actions. And sometimes all it takes is one step through a door to change an entire world. The power of one decision. James Anderson's story is not just about transforming a hotel. It is a profound lesson on justice, courage, and the true worth of human beings. It reminds us that change never begins with something massive. It begins with small actions that shake an entire system. A decision to stand against injustice. A step toward what is right rather than walking away. A single voice that refuses to stay silent. These moments create ripples that can reshape the world. This story also proves that no one deserves to be judged by their appearance or status. Everyone deserves respect, no matter who they are, what they look like, or where they come from. Prejudice doesn't just hurt those who are excluded, it limits those who carry it, blinding them to the true value of the people around them. James didn't change Grand Horizon for profit. He changed it because he understood that real success isn't measured in wealth, but in the people given a chance. Like Lily Harris, those who embrace change will always be the ones who lead the way to a better future. In the end, the greatest lesson of all is this. Change doesn't come from waiting. It comes from brave actions. And sometimes, one right decision can change a life, a community, maybe even the world.